Hey Courtney, thank you for responding to my post, and thank you for your condolences. It's definitely been a rough week, but lots of supportive friends and family. So we're we're getting there. So thank you. Um, yeah, a few things I wanted to respond to based on your response. I know you have aspirations of being an administrator, and from what I can tell, you're going to be a great administrator. Um, it's it's funny you said some of the things you do that sort of cause students to like you, and you're kind of unsure of that. Um, today, in fact, I was at school and I was meeting with some teachers about social emotional learning tier one, and just talking about what they do in class, what they're seeing, what are the trends, what are they doing that works, and um, what I've noticed is a lot of teachers are doing a lot of great things. They have no idea that it's tier one SEL. They just that's what it took. They'll say like, "This is what I do." I mean, this is just good teaching. It's just it's how I do it. I didn't know it was social emotional learning tier one strategy. When I was a principal, I used to have post conferences with teachers, and I'd say things like, "Hey, high school teachers," I'd say, "What level of depth of knowledge was that lesson?" And they'll say, I don't know what you're talking about." And this is after we've had some depth of knowledge PD. And I'll say, well, you were kind of going between levels 2 and 3, and that's right where you want to be. And let me give you some examples of how you did that. I'll have 20 examples, and they'll go, "Oh, I'm doing it. I just didn't realize I was doing it." So I try to help teachers realize just all the great stuff they are doing, because sometimes it's just the awareness, so that it can be intentional and replicated. And anyway, so that spoke to me when you said that. It's also funny. You talked about some likable teachers, and it's good to be likable, and relationships are important, vital, maybe the most important thing. But it's funny, and you've probably noticed this too. But I would always hear about teachers that were likable, and they were likable, and then or not likable. I'm sorry, people who were good teachers, really good teachers. And then when I became an administrator, what I realized was they're not good teachers. They're just likable. There can be a difference there, and so sometimes we confuse that, and vice versa. There are some people that I've seen are very effective teachers or leaders that may not be the most likable, but they can turn around when they have to, and sort of get the job done. Yeah, taking the long way, it's important. So that'd be my biggest advice to new administrators is because you're really going to want to take shortcuts. Um, that you're making seemingly thousands of decisions all day long, and it's just a constant stream of just problems you're addressing, and you're gonna want to take shortcuts, and that's okay sometimes. The little problems that you're solving, it's okay to do shortcuts, but for the big things, the controversial things, the things that are going to require teachers to change or students, you got to go the long way. You got to take the time, and especially when you're new. I think it's always good advice, but especially when you're new. Same thing with the loudest voices. It's so easy as a principal to listen to your loudest voices. You have to be really intentional about how you're going to get. And there's some teachers I've noticed that don't want their voice in the mix, and you still got to find a way. You really got to include everyone when you're an administrator, especially a building administrator. It's not easy, but it's important, and if you're intentional about it, it can be done. Um, it's. I remember back to when I was a principal, and one of our teachers was shadowing me because she was going to become a principal, and so she'd be behind closed doors with me when teachers would come in. They'd be upset about stuff, and they'd leave, and she just had this look on her face like, "Holy cow, you got to be kidding me! Those are adults." I said, "Yeah, but you got to kind of change your mindset as an administrator. Like that, it's people are people, and so the way that you kind of work with kids is kind of how you work with adults. There's different ways of treating little Timmy than there is little Jimmy. You know what I mean. So I'll give you an example. So there's a teacher that I worked with when I was a principal that was pretty difficult. He could challenge. He's kind of a contrarian. No matter what we did, he'd push back on it, even if he was included, even if it was his idea. He needed control. And so once I learned that he needed to have control over situations, and this, what I'm about to tell you is borderline manipulative. Yeah, but you kind of have to do stuff like this when you're a principal. If I had to say no to something that this teacher wanted, if I had to tell this teacher no, later that day, or maybe the next day, depending, I would go to his room when no one else was there, and I would ask him something. I would say, hey, can you help me understand this? Or, this teacher had been in the district for years and years and years. I'd say things like, hey, historically in the community, can you help me understand what was going on at this time or this? Or, hey, I just heard something that happened, 10 years ago. It sounds pretty cool. Like, what are your thoughts? Or just something where I'm asking for advice or support or even just a question, because that would give him the control back. And that was sort of like calm tensions, because if I didn't do that, you'd start to string up those no's, and when you're saying no consistent, and then it really started to impact culture climate. He was really making a mess, and so I don't know, maybe that's a bad example, but you really, you can't let your loud voices run the building, but you certainly are going to have to deal with your loud voices some way or another. And so that's one example of something I did with one of the loud voices. I don't know, it's probably not helpful at all. I'm really exhausted from the week. Anyway, I'll wrap this up, but thank you for responding. And it's good working with you. Thanks, Courtney. Have a good weekend.